Have you ever sat quietly, perhaps in your favorite chair, and just wondered, when did things change between me and my children? You remember it all so clearly. You spent years, decades, raising them. You changed the diapers, you stayed up through all those sleepless nights, and you guided them through their first heartbreaks and their biggest triumphs. You gave up your own weekends, your vacations, and sometimes, let's be honest, you even put your own dreams on hold, just so their dreams could come true. And now, when you speak, they interrupt. When you offer your hard-won advice, they just brush it off. When you need a little help, they're suddenly too busy. And worst of all, the deepest cut. You feel like somehow, perhaps in your own home, you've become invisible. If that feeling is familiar, if that ache is sitting in your chest right now, please know, you are not alone. As a doctor who has worked with families for over 40 years, I have sat across from so many wonderful parents who reach this exact, painful moment in life. The roles start to shift. You were once the protector, the teacher, the one they ran to for absolutely everything. But now it feels like they've stopped seeing you the same way. Sometimes they treat you more like a nuisance than a guide. Or worse, they make you feel like a burden. And that kind of pain, it cuts deeper than almost anything else. It's natural to want to react, to remind them of all the things you've done, to get angry, to shout, or maybe just to withdraw completely. But here's the truth, and it's a truth I've seen play out time and time again in my practice. And it may surprise you. Trying to demand respect, it almost never brings it back. What actually works is something much more powerful. It's something far more dignified. That is exactly what we are going to talk about today. Because there are simple but profound things you can start doing, starting right now, that can completely shift how your children see and treat you. Not through guilt, not through arguments, but through quiet strength, calm boundaries, and most importantly, self-respect. These aren't tricks. These are real, practical life shifts that can restore the dignity and the connection you deserve. Before we begin, I want to honor the experience in this room. If that feeling of being invisible, that feeling of being overlooked, is familiar to you, even just sometimes, please take a moment to comment a simple yes below. It's not for me. It's for each other. So you know you are truly not alone in this. Okay, let's get started. All right. Let's start with the first, and perhaps the most common mistake I see in my practice. This is the mistake of trying too hard to please. Have you ever said yes when every single part of you really wanted and needed to say no? You said yes, just to keep the peace. Or maybe you've gone way out of your way to do something for your children, even when it made you uncomfortable or cost you time or money you didn't have, just so they wouldn't be upset with you. Many parents do this without even realizing it's become a pattern. Maybe you rearranged your whole day, canceling your own doctor's appointment, just to babysit the grandkids at the last minute, even when you weren't feeling well. Or perhaps you've been in a situation where you let them speak to you in a tone that, well, it just made your stomach turn. But you stayed quiet. You didn't say anything, just so you wouldn't seem difficult. Here is the truth I've learned from watching families for 40 years. And this is the core of the problem. The more you chase their approval, the less respect they ultimately have for you. Now, this isn't because they are ungrateful or bad people. It's because of a deep, fundamental part of human nature. We are wired to value what stands strong, not what always yields. When you constantly bend over backward, you are, in a quiet way, teaching them that your needs don't matter. I'm reminded of a patient I knew for years, a wonderful woman named Eleanor. She had raised 3 children, given them everything she had. But as she got older, and especially after her husband passed, she started stepping aside. More and more. She let them make decisions about her home, about her health, even about her money. She once told me, "I just want to keep the family together, doctor. It's not worth a fight." But a sad thing happened. The more she gave in, the more they stopped listening. When she did finally have an opinion, they'd pat her on the hand and just do whatever they wanted anyway. She thought she was being kind. She thought she was being a peacekeeper. But what they saw, what they learned to see, was someone they didn't have to take seriously anymore. You see, Respect doesn't come from sacrifice. It comes from self-respect. When you begin putting yourself second in everything, you quietly teach the people around you that your voice, your needs, your time, they just don't matter as much as theirs. And people, even our children, respond to that message. So, if this sounds even a little familiar, let me say this clearly. It is time to stop bending over backward. It is okay to say no. It is okay to set limits. You are allowed to speak up when something doesn't feel right. You are allowed to take up space. And you do not need their permission to do so. It doesn't mean being rude. It just means showing your children and yourself that your time, your energy, and your presence are valuable. Respect starts with you. This brings us to the second big mistake, which often happens right after the first one fails. This is the mistake of arguing. When someone talks down to us or dismisses us, our first primal instinct is to push back. You want to say, "How dare you speak to me that way?" Or maybe you want to pull out the history card. "Do you remember everything I have done for you? After all my sacrifices?" And while that response might feel justified in the moment, in my experience, it almost never works. In fact, it usually just adds fuel to the fire. It invites them into a power struggle. It turns the conversation into a debate, a fight that no one can win. Here's something that can truly shift your experience. Stop arguing. Start leading. Here is the core reason why. When you respond to disrespect with anger or with loud, emotional outbursts, it actually shows that the other person still has control over your inner peace. You are, in effect, letting them decide your emotional state. But when you respond with calm, measured confidence, it sends a completely and powerfully different message. It says, "I don't need to raise my voice. I know who I am. And your behavior doesn't get to rock my foundation." Let me tell you about Arthur. Arthur was a retired high school teacher I knew. In his classroom, for over 30 years, students respected him. He had a quiet authority. But at home, with his adult children, it was a different story. They barely listened. They talked over him at dinner. They dismissed his concerns about his own finances, and they even mocked his ideas for retirement. At first, Arthur fought back. He was a teacher, after all. He knew how to debate. Every conversation turned into an argument. Every family disagreement ended in shouting. And still, nothing changed. They just saw him as a grumpy old man. Then, something shifted. Arthur decided to stop fighting. He just stopped. He still shared his thoughts, but he did it calmly, once, and without any attachment to winning. He stopped chasing their respect and he started embodying it. He carried himself like someone who already had nothing to prove. And something amazing happened. His children began to notice. The less he argued, the more they seemed to listen. They started asking his opinion. Not because he yelled louder, but because he stopped playing that same old, exhausting game. You don't have to fight for respect. You just have to live it. Let your calm become your power. Let your tone carry your strength. You don't need to convince your children to see your worth. They will feel it in your very presence. Now, for our third point. This one might feel heavy, but I promise you, it is also the most freeing. This is the mistake of emotional dependency. Here is a truth that can be hard to swallow. You do not need your children to fulfill you emotionally. That doesn't mean you don't love them deeply. Of course you do. That love is, and always will be, a core part of you. But the more you depend on them to make you feel appreciated, to make you feel happy, or to make you feel whole, the more the dynamic shifts in the wrong, unhealthy direction. It puts an impossible burden on them, and it leaves you in a constant state of waiting. Waiting for the phone to ring. Waiting for the visit. Here is the psychological root of it. People, yes, even our own children, are naturally drawn to and respectful of those who are emotionally independent. When your sense of happiness, your sense of peace, comes from within, not from how often they call, or how sweet they are, or how much they do for you. They begin to see you differently. They no longer see you as someone clinging to the past or as someone who needs them for validation. They see you as someone with a rich, meaningful life of their own. And that is attractive. That is respectable. I remember Carol. She was a beautiful soul who had given every ounce of herself to her children. But when they grew up and moved away, she was just heartbroken. She told me she felt empty. She waited by the phone. She called them every day. She would leave these long, sad voicemails reminding them how much she missed them, asking why they didn't call. And what happened? They started pulling away even more. She didn't understand. "I'm just giving them love," she'd say. "Why aren't they returning it?" Then one day, after a lot of talking, Carol decided to focus on herself. She joined a dance class, something she'd wanted to do for 30 years. She started meeting friends for lunch. She started reading again, painting again. She started laughing again. And do you know what happened? Her phone started ringing more. Her children were calling her. They wanted to hear about her life. They missed her, not just her attention. Because now, she wasn't chasing their presence. She was attracting it simply by living fully. So, if you've been feeling that ache in your chest when they don't call, or that quiet sadness when they don't visit, please remind yourself, your worth does not come from how much attention they give you. It comes from within you. And the more you tend to that inner light, the more others, including your children, will be drawn to it. Naturally and respectfully. This leads us directly to our fourth mistake. And in my opinion, this is the foundation for everything else. This is the mistake of having no boundaries. Now, when I say boundaries, people sometimes think of walls, of shutting people out. That's not what this is. Boundaries are not about walls. They are about teaching others how to treat you. They are the clear, loving instructions you give to the world about what is acceptable and what is not. Believe it or not, many adult children push boundaries, not because they are intentionally cruel or disrespectful, but because, from the very beginning, the boundaries were never clearly defined. Think about it. If your children interrupt you constantly, if they make major decisions about your life without your input, or if they speak to you in a tone that makes you feel small, it's likely not because they woke up one day and decided to be unkind. It's because, at some point, perhaps years ago, those behaviors were allowed. They were never corrected. Maybe it was out of love. Maybe it was a simple desire to avoid conflict. You told yourself, "Oh, they're just stressed," or "That's just how they are." But here is the critical core truth. Love without boundaries eventually turns into resentment. And silence, repeated over time, becomes permission. Let me tell you about Richard. He was a proud, retired businessman. In his professional life, he was confident in every room, respected by everyone who had ever worked with him. But at home with his grown children, things were different. They interrupted him mid-sentence. They rolled their eyes when he offered advice. They spoke to him as if he didn't know how to live his own life. At first, he just let it slide. It's not worth arguing, he thought. He wanted peace. But each time he stayed silent, they pushed just a little bit further. Until one day, during a family dinner, one of his sons snapped at him, just for telling a simple story. That night, something changed in Richard. He didn't yell. He didn't shame them. He simply waited. And when things calmed down, he spoke to his son calmly, but firmly. He said, "You don't have to agree with everything I say, but I expect to be spoken to with respect. And if that's not possible, I'll excuse myself from conversations like this." It was quiet after that, but something powerful had happened. He didn't threaten. He didn't argue. He just made it clear. This is the standard. This is what I allow in my presence. And over time, it worked. His children realized he meant it. They didn't lose access to him, but they began to earn his engagement. Respect became part of the new dynamic. Not because he demanded it, but because he required it. Boundaries are not about control. They are about clarity. And when your boundaries are clear, the people in your life, yes, even your children, begin to show up differently. Alright, our fifth mistake. This one can be especially hard for parents, because it feels like it goes against our very nature. This is the mistake of overgiving. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You offer to help. You give advice. You give your time, your energy, sometimes even your money. Because that's what you've always done. You are the helper. You are the provider. And maybe in your heart, you're not even doing it to get something back. But still, it hurts when it goes unnoticed. It stings when they don't say, thank you. When they just expect it. When they take and take, but never pause to check in on you. Here's the problem from a psychological standpoint. When you keep giving and giving without any boundaries or any expectation of acknowledgement, you don't teach them to love you more. You teach them to expect more. Slowly, your generosity stops being a gift. It just becomes background noise. It becomes something they don't even see anymore. It's just what mom does or what dad is for. I had a patient named Walter, a father of 3, and he was always the helper. He'd lend money without hesitation, even when it strained his own retirement budget. He would show up any time they needed help moving or fixing something. Even in his 70s, he told me he rearranged his own doctor appointments just to babysit on short notice. But when he had a minor surgery, a knee replacement, none of his children offered to stay with him afterward. They all had things going on. They just assumed he'd be fine. At that moment, he told me, something broke in him. But instead of lashing out, he paused. He reflected. And then he made a quiet, but very firm, decision. No more automatic yes. From now on, he would help. But only when it was truly needed, when it worked for him, and when it was appreciated. He didn't become bitter. He just became clear. When they'd call for last-minute help, he'd calmly say, I'd love to, but I have other plans that day. Or, I'm happy to assist with that, if you can handle X, Y, and Z first. At first, his children were confused. They were even a little annoyed. But soon, they began to show more gratitude. They started saying, thank you, again. Because the help wasn't expected anymore. It was valued. The truth is, when you pull back just enough to let others feel the weight of your absence, they begin to appreciate your presence again. You don't need to stop being kind. But kindness without boundaries, it becomes a disservice to you, and in the end, to them. And that brings us to our final point. This isn't so much a mistake as it is the core truth that unlocks the solution to all the others. You are not just a parent. I'll say that again, because it's so important. You are not just a parent. You are a person. You are a whole person, with your own life, your own dreams, your own time, and your own identity. And one of the most empowering, most healing, and most respect-building things you can do for your children and for yourself is to build a life that exists outside of them. I know that might sound strange at first. Maybe you spent decades, 30, 40, 50 years, putting your family first. Maybe you told yourself, I'll start taking care of myself. I'll start my hobbies once the kids are settled. But now they are grown, and you are in this next season of life. Ask yourself, what fills my cup? Because here's what happens. And I have seen this transformation with my own eyes. When your children see that you are living, not just waiting. When they see you are active, engaged, and passionate, they admire you. They are drawn to you. And they respect you. They respect you not because they feel guilty, not because they feel obligated, but because they see someone who radiates dignity and purpose. You are not here on this earth just to serve them. You are here to live fully. You are here to rediscover parts of yourself that may have been put on pause for a very long time. Whether it's joining that class you've always thought about, picking up a new hobby, traveling, even if it's just to the next state, reconnecting with old friends, or simply enjoying your mornings at your own pace with a good book. You are allowed to prioritize your own joy. And when you do, something beautiful happens. Your children start seeing you not just as mom or dad, the person who exists to help them. They start seeing you as a whole, vibrant person, someone with their own story, their own strength, their own light. And that is the foundation of true, lasting respect. Now, as you begin to practice these things, as you start to honor your own boundaries, speak up when you need to, and let go of those old, heavy expectations, you may start to notice something powerful. The tension begins to ease. That weight on your chest that you've been carrying around, it starts to lighten. You're no longer walking on eggshells in your own home, or hoping for just a few scraps of appreciation. You're standing tall again. And here is the heart of it all. It's not because your children have suddenly changed overnight. It's because you have. And that truly is the secret. You see, respect isn't something we can force out of other people. It's not something we can demand, or argue for, or guilt them into giving. It's something we quietly and powerfully inspire simply by the way we choose to live. The moment you start living with more self-respect, everything else begins to fall into place. Let's revisit something simple, something so often forgotten in the noise of life. You matter. You are important. Not for what you give, not for how much you've done, but simply because you are you. And the world and your family, they need the version of you who feels confident, who feels clear, and who feels calm. The version of you who doesn't shrink just to keep the peace, but who stands in their truth, with love. That version, it changes everything. And please, remember this crucial distinction. Love and respect are not the same thing. They are two different things. You can love your children with all your heart, and still set limits. You can care about them with every fiber of your being, and still say, I won't be spoken to that way. That is not harsh. That is healthy. That is what real, mature, loving relationships look like. When your children see that you value yourself, it gives them permission. It invites them to value you too. When they see you living a full life, they begin to admire you again. Not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect. So, here's the question I'd like you to gently ask yourself today. Just quietly, to yourself. Where am I still giving my power away? Is it in the way you always say yes, even when you are tired and you truly want to say no? Is it in the way you stay silent, when your voice and your hard-won wisdom deserve to be heard? Or maybe it's in the way you still wait for their approval, just to feel good about yourself. Wherever that is, just start there. Make one small change. Maybe tomorrow, it's saying, I actually have other plans today, but I'd love to see you another time. Maybe it's just telling your son or daughter calmly, I need to be spoken to respectfully. Or maybe it's just taking that afternoon to finally join that class you've been putting off. Just one small step. That's all it takes. If this message resonated with you, if you've ever sat with that quiet, deep ache of feeling overlooked or undervalued, I want to say this from my heart. You deserve better. Not because of what you did in the past, but because of who you are right now. As we wrap up, we've explored some very real and very healing shifts in how we carry ourselves. But as I always tell my patients, knowledge is only powerful when we put it into action. So now, I have one important question for you. What is the one commitment you are making to yourself after watching this video? It could be as simple as, I will say no at least once this week, or I will start that hobby I've been putting off, or I will speak up when I feel dismissed. Please, share your personal commitment in the comments below. It's a promise to yourself, and it lets others in our community know they aren't alone. Let's inspire each other to take that first, brave step. And if you found real value, or maybe just a little bit of comfort, in our time together today, please show your support by giving this video a thumbs up. It truly does help other people find this kind of content. And if you haven't yet, I'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button and the little bell. It's more than just subscribing. It's joining a community. A community of friends dedicated to walking this path with dignity, together. Finally, think of one person, maybe a friend, a sister, or someone in your life, who needs to hear this message today, and please share it with them. You might just be giving them the encouragement they need. You are never too old to reclaim your voice. You are never too late to rebuild respect. Thank you for spending this time with me. You are worthy, you are strong, and you are not alone. Until next time, take care, and remember, living with dignity is the most powerful message you'll ever send.